welcome to episode 97 of Prose. This week, confront exile from the south, and bravely face down an alien invasion. Please go follow the show on social media under @ProsePodcast, and if you are enjoying the show, please click that 5-star button on Apple Podcasts for Prose. It really helps me out so very much. For easiest access to the show, subscribe using whatever podcast catcher is your favorite. Lastly, but most assuredly not least, check out the Prose Patreon page at patreon.com/Prose Podcast and consider supporting the show there. Not only will I be eternally grateful, you'll get some swag out of the deal. Thanks for listening. Let's get to the tale, shall we? This week we have Anywhere But Here and Philip K. Dick's The Eyes Have It. Enjoy. Anywhere But Here, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Southern churches are musician factories. From the earliest times in a young one's life, from the moment a child can carry a guitar or a tune, churches lift up and empower young would-be musicians, giving them a stage on which to perform, lending them an audience that is given only to support and positivity and love. Hecklers and boos are unknown. Warmth and applause embrace these nascent performers day in and day out. With each and every passing Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday evening, and special event, that singer masters their confidence. That pianist stops their hands from shaking. That mandolin player becomes more precise on hitting those frets just right. That organist figures out those pedals just a bit more. That guitarist transitions between chords ever more flawlessly. The relationship is symbiotic, though. The community at large gets back what they give in spades. In a region where even those that are considered well off would be rather low on the socioeconomic scale anywhere else in the country, a place that offers free entertainment is invaluable. Southern churches, then, do not disappoint, offering both a pastor's fiery, rambling, accusatory sermons and an inundation with music for all the attendees. The latter is provided, of course, by the subpar musicians who, through the interactions with this hungry but supportive audience, become on-par musicians and eventually rather good musicians. The lack of opportunity for anything resembling economic, professional, or even personal advancement in the region lends to these young musicians' talents in its own way. Across the South, there is a desperate desire to matter. From birth, children with smarts or talent are told to get out, to run. The first chance they get, an intelligent or talented young one is encouraged to leave and never look back. To make it, you have to go anywhere but here. They are taught to mask or suppress their accents. They are taught what fancy people are like so they can get by in that company. They are shown on a map where they should aim for to make it in life. The football and basketball players aim for an SEC school, of course, but only because there is a heavy bias for those schools below the Mason-Dixon. Clearly, those talented athletes will be heading to the pros anyway. The AP students and 4.0ers shoot for the coastal universities. Anything that gets them out on those peripheral edges that hold the big bucks by way of the networks of wealthier, more connected families those poorer kids see as all but royalty. Those that don't have a talent in these regards, but have a taste for service and duty, look to the military as their way out, and way to college and a better life. The 4 branches start recruiting in southern schools when the young men are about 12. The musicians, the artists of all sorts, they aim for the coasts too for the most part, though a great many have made Nashville their home over the years, and now that it's becoming a hub of technology and industry in and of itself, more so lately. Out in California, up in New York, just a skip away in Nashville though, those audiences aren't the same. They boo, they heckle, they profess indifference. That maybe being the worst of all. All the far-flung southern diasporic wanderers in this world miss home and crave to return permanently in some way, form, or fashion. But they can't. The lack of opportunity and innovation and understanding and education and financial possibility and progressive policy and, well, the lack of, in general, locks them out of those homes they love so much, isolates them from their families, from their friends, from themselves. For the musicians, this is doubly painful, as they can't know those open-armed hugs that audiences both metaphorically and most Sundays, quite literally, gave them all those years coming up as they bumbled their way across church stages. So here's to all the singers, pianists, mandolin players, organists, guitar players. Here's to all those talented and just plain driven exiles out in the wider world, succeeding, thriving, but always wishing they could be back home, but doomed to always be stuck everywhere but there. Thank you for listening to Anywhere But Here, an original short story by me, Jared I. McGee. Please stick around for our next short story, which is coming right now. The Eyes Have It by Philip K. Dick. It was quite the accident I discovered this incredible invasion of Earth by life forms from another planet. As yet, I haven't done anything about it. I can't think of anything to do. I wrote to the government, and they sent back a pamphlet on the repair and maintenance of frame houses. Anyhow, the whole thing is known. I'm not the first to discover it. Maybe it's even under control. I was sitting in my easy chair, idly turning the pages of a paperbacked book someone had left on the bus, when I came across the reference that first put me on the trail. For a moment, I didn't respond. It took some time for the full import to sink in. After I'd comprehended, it seemed odd I hadn't noticed it right away. The reference was clearly to a non-human species of incredible properties, not indigenous to Earth. A species, I hasten to point out, customarily masquerading as ordinary human beings. Their disguise, however, became transparent in the face of the following observations by the author. It was at once obvious the author knew everything, and was taking it in his stride. The line, and I tremble remembering it even now, read, "His eyes slowly roved about the room." Vague chills assailed me. I tried to picture the eyes. Did they roll like dimes? The passage indicated not. They seemed to move through the air, not over the surface. Rather rapidly, apparently. No one in the story was surprised. That's what tipped me off. No sign of amazement at such an outrageous thing. Later, the matter was amplified. His eyes moved from person to person. There it was, in a nutshell. The eyes had clearly come apart from the rest of him and were on their own. My heart pounded and my breath choked in my windpipe. I had stumbled on an accidental mention of a totally unfamiliar race. Obviously non-terrestrial. Yet, to the characters in the book, it was perfectly natural, which suggested they belonged to the same species. And the author? A slow suspicion burned in my mind. The author was taking it rather too easily in his stride. Evidently, he felt this was quite a usual thing. He made absolutely no attempt to conceal this knowledge. The story continued. Presently, his eyes fastened on Julia. Julia, being a lady, had at least the breeding to feel indignant. She is described as blushing and knitting her brows angrily. At this, I sighed with relief. They weren't all non-terrestrials. The narrative continues. Slowly, calmly, his eyes examined every inch of her. Great Scott! But here the girl turned and stomped off, and the matter ended. I lay back in my chair, gasping with horror. My wife and my family regarded me in wonder. What's wrong, dear? My wife asked. I couldn't tell her. Knowledge like this was too much for the ordinary run-of-the-mill person. I had to keep it to myself. Nothing. Oh, I gasped. I leaped up, snatched the book, and hurried out of the room. In the garage, I continued reading. There was more. Still trembling, I read the next revealing passage. He put his arm around Julia. Presently, she asked him if he would remove his arm. He immediately did so with a smile. It is not said what was done with the arm after the fellow had removed it. Maybe it was left standing upright in the corner. Maybe it was thrown away. I don't care. In any case, the full meaning was there, staring me right in the face. Here was a race of creatures capable of removing portions of their anatomy at will. Eyes, arms, and maybe more, without batting an eyelash. My knowledge of biology came in handy at this point. Obviously, they were simple beings, unicellular, some sort of primitive single-celled things. being no more developed than a starfish. Starfish can do the same thing, you know. I read on and came to this incredible revelation, tossed off coolly by the author without the faintest tremor. Outside the movie theater, we split up. Part of us went inside, part over to the cafe for dinner. Binary vision, obviously. Splitting in half and forming two entities. Probably each lower half went to the cafe, it being farther, and the upper halves to the movies. I read on, my hands shaking. I had really stumbled onto something here. My mind reeled as I made out this passage. I'm afraid there's no doubt about it. Poor Bibney has lost his head again. Which was followed by, and Bob says he has utterly no guts. Yet, Bibney got around as well as the next person. The next person, however, was just as strange. He was soon described as totally lacking in brains. There was no doubt of the thing in the next passage. Julia, whom I had thought to be the one normal person, reveals herself as also being an alien life form, similar to the rest. Quite deliberately, Julia had given her heart to the young man. It didn't relate what the final disposition of the organ was, but I didn't really care. It was evident Julia had gone right on living in her usual manner, like all the others in the book. Without a heart, arms, eyes, brains, viscera dividing up in two when the occasion demanded, without qualm. Thereupon she gave him her hand. I sickened. The rascal now had her hand as well as her heart. I shuddered to think what he's done with them by this time. He took her arm. Not content to wait, he had to start dismantling her on his own. Flushing crimson, I slammed the book shut and leaped to my feet. But not in time to escape one last reference to those carefree bits of anatomy whose travels had originally thrown me on the track. Her eyes followed him all the way down the road and across the meadow. I rushed from the garage and back inside the warm house, as if the accursed things were following me. My wife and children were playing Monopoly in the kitchen. I joined them and played with frantic fervor, brow feverish, teeth chattering. I had had enough of the thing. I want to hear no more about it. Let them come. Let them invade this earth. I don't want to get mixed up in it. I have absolutely no stomach for it. Thank you for listening to The Eyes Have It by Philip K. Dick. The Eyes Have It was originally featured as the short story of the day on March 2nd, 2018 on AmericanLiterature.com. All music and sound effects you've heard throughout episode 97 come from YouTube's royalty-free audio library. Everything is being used under CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. That does it this week for Prose. Our next full episode will come in 2 weeks' time. Please do consider sharing the podcast with someone you think might enjoy these bi-weekly journeys together. Thank you all for your patience as I continue to test new audio equipment. My apologies if it's strange or different from that to which you're accustomed. As you continue about your day, I hope you'll remember to love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is always stranger than fiction. Thanks again for listening.